All right, Shalom Israel. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Haha, Kwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing His truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. The Iranian war is causing a global food crisis. Okay, now there's a chart right here that says agricultural outlook. Iran war impacts global food prices. So, I try to jack up the screen as much as I can without taking away the quality of the screen. But as you see right here, we see supply and input costs, right? We see European impact. We see U.S. market resilience. And then we got right here what we see in the middle, the Strait of Hormuz disruption. Okay, and ultimately, you could blame the United States for this, for constantly harassing, assaulting, and attacking Iran for not opening the Strait of Hormuz to them. Okay, now right here it says the global food crisis, faced with the blockade of vital oil routes, the extreme dependence of modern agriculture on on fossil fuels foreshadows not only high prices but also age. So let's click on this and let's tap into what this is talking about. A farmer in Nasik, Maharashtra, India, fertilizes banana plants. Photo credit. Okay, yeah, who cares? Okay, Facebook blockades of vital oil routes. The extreme dependence of modern agriculture on fossil fuels foreshadows not only high prices, but also a food shortage capable of generating global social upheaval. This article is a warning. A global food crisis is likely approaching, driven by the collapse of supply chains feeding the agri-food system, a consequence of war against Iran and the resulting blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The prospect has gone largely unnoticed by most political and economic actors. Supply crises, as a rule, are resolved through the law of supply and demand. When supply falls, prices rise. Those who can afford to pay grumble but pay, while those who cannot find a cheaper substitute or do without. But we are talking about food, and food is indispensable to life. To those who believe that the market self-regulates and that this supply crisis will therefore be absorbed through higher prices, costlier food, but food nothingless, I would say there is a threshold. Before a certain level of supply, the problem is no longer that food becomes expensive. The problem is that there is not enough food for everyone. And there's a reason for that. Because ultimately, the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, is behind it. Because remember, the Lord is the ultimate chess player. Okay? And he came to the conclusion that attacking the Strait of Hormuz through using Esau Edom through the U.S. government is one of the best moves to make to cause a global food crisis. Because remember, according to the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, Israel has been scattered on the four corners of the earth. So in order to punish Israel on the four corners of the earth, right, for their iniquities, you know, through a global food crisis, go for the Strait of Hormuz. But anyways, regardless of how much money people have to spend, this article explains the dynamic well. If the law of supply and demand is the global economy's homeostatic mechanism, its way of restoring equilibrium after a shock, when supply chains are its Achilles heel. Okay, supply chain disruptions and Extreme weather events periodically affect one country after another and are offset through global trade. But never before has there been a situation like the present one, in which farmers across every corner of the world are simultaneously grappling with shrinking supply and rising input costs, fertilizers, pesticides, diesel, lubricants, and transport. One thing is certain: anywhere in the world, a farmer pays closer attention to news about Super El Nino than the average person does. Okay, agriculture has always been a business of thin margins and constant uncertainty, where disincentives weigh heavily. Whether to skip this planting season or to plant less is a decision each farmer makes individually. Agriculture is a fragmented activity, loosely coordinated at best. There is simply no way to know how many procedures have chosen not to plant. But since February 28th, millions across the world have made that choice. And well, there's a reason for that. Let's go here real quick. Okay. And we're going to scroll down here to the Apocrypha and type in second asterisk 15. Okay. Then we're going to view chapter. Let's see. We're going to start at verse 12. Second asterisk 15, verse 12. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that Yahweh shall bring upon it. Yeah, because you look everywhere, bridges are passing for B's, they're barely passing for A's. You know, you got buildings collapsing, falling apart. You know, there was a skyscraper that they were working on here in the US that was, collapsing, in the state of collapsing, into the city. Streets are barely passing for bees. So the foundation of this country is falling apart, you know. And even buildings nowadays, you got lots of buildings that have closed down, and you know, like you'd be an idiot to live in a skyscraper building, because eventually there's going to come a time, a point where it's going to start suffering from decay, and then it's going to collapse, And how terrifying would that be? You laying your ass down, and then you know your your the floor that you on starts to collapse way down to the bottom, and you just in bed, just you probably bounce out of bed and get smashed by some big debris. So hey, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power. Verse 13. They that till the ground shall mourn. Who's responsible for tilling the grounds? The farmers are. So the farmers shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail. Their seeds, there's going to come a time, a point where the seeds that these farmers plant in order to get crops are going to fail through the blasting and hail and with a fearful constellation. Okay, so now let's come over here, because the farmers are the ones that's going to get hit the hardest. Okay. Okay. Matthew chapter 24, and we're going to go to verse 7. Okay. Because a famine is prophesied to happen, right? Matthew 24:7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So it's not going to just be in one country, it's going to be multiple countries where famines are going to hit. And then, if we do this, right? Second Esdras, chapter 15, verse 5. Behold, save the Lord, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. I will bring plagues upon the world. What kind of plagues? The sword, famine, death, and destruction. Why? For wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Because wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth. And why is that? Job chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. And who's the wicked? The Edomites, according to Malachi 1 and 4, which is the self proclaimed white man. With that, I'm going to say Shalom is on to the next one.